Hello, welcome to another Facebook Live session. You know, you could say the big what do you do next on the recent news is the Atlanta Falcons, right? Did you watch the Super Bowl? So we could talk about the Patriots, you know, the biggest comeback in history. But I must say, who I was feeling for that day was the Falcons. I don't believe it was them who absolutely fell apart and lost. They just played above their heads, out of their minds, beyond their potential for that first half, and didn't allow the Patriots to be who the Patriots are. And then the Patriots, by that fourth quarter, found themselves, and you know, psychology is interesting in sports. Everything went south for the Falcons and north for the Patriots. So I got to thinking, and I'm sure many of you have you know, felt that sort of compassion and empathy for the Falcons, you know, to lose that badly after upsetting the greatest team of our time, and then it just going down, 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 and they couldn't hang on, they couldn't salvage it, and they lost. It was shocking. First overtime game in Super Bowl history, and a number of the Falcons have said since then that they're lost inside. They can't find themselves again. They haven't slept since the Super Bowl on Sunday, and I do feel for them. So there's the whole big issue, which all of us know, about getting over disappointment, getting over failure. But I wanted to kind of turn that on its head today and take the converse situation when you've done well. You've had success. Maybe you've had big success that you've worked at for a long, long time, months, years. And then what do? Don't you deserve? You know, after that Cuba swim, that wasn't a couple of months. It wasn't 1 year. It was a 35-year dream. And if I went back even farther into my youth, when it started percolating and my researching it and believing in it, we could literally call it about 40 years of my life were spent looking at that Cuba swim, how to solve it. And I finally did it at the age of 64 after 5 times. So now it's been almost 3.5 years since the walk up onto that beach in Key West. And a lot of people say to me, sort of half, whom I come upon, who want to talk about it, say to me, well, it's been a long time ago, wasn't it? It was like a way back, 2013, Labor Day. And then half the other people say to me, it was just yesterday. It was only 3 short years ago. And I feel both. I feel both of those things. But what I need to face, Bonnie and I, head handler of my swim, my best friend, and I just went back to Key West last weekend, and they had a marvelous new introduction of an exhibit, an installation at the Custom House Museum. It's sort of the history of Key West. It goes back to the Spanish galleons that sank there in the 1700s and the people who died for those gold bullions, to the Fidel Castro regime and the Flagler settling of Key West, Hemingway, all of that. And now our swim, my swim, is honored at the entrance to that Museum of History of Key West, the Custom House. It's not a big exhibit. It's probably only just about as big as the bookshelves area that you see back here, a couple of blown up photos and some memorabilia, some artifacts from the swim. But it's in a prominent place right at the entrance. So thousands of people who come in and out of that town, they travel there from all over the world. They come in on cruise ships. They come from vacation. Snowbirds go down there in the horrible stretches of winter, like now. And so many people will be entering that museum and figuring out, you know, what our history was, getting a chance to take a glance at it. So Bonnie's honored, my whole team is honored. A lot of them were there during the weekend celebration. But I got to thinking as I was walking around the streets of Key West after that celebration, how long am I going to look back and pat myself on the back and thank my team for everything we put into that swim? Don't we deserve it? Didn't we work long? That's my dog shaking. He was just out in the rain. He's shaking himself. Don't we deserve a long and storied celebration? The training itself was so darn grueling. I remember it. I feel it. on the other hand, I don't want to be Gloria Swanson playing Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard. And you know, that whole 1950 noir, black noir film was all about Norma Desmond holding on to her film celebrity, her film star status, sitting around, you know, with the drapes closed, watching her old movies, remembering when she was the grand star. I don't want to be Norma Desmond. I have plenty of vitality left at age 67. I want to punch and move on and continue to discover all the potential that's within me, and not make my whole life about that glorious Cuba swim. So as we're talking today, I'm going to try to take a look at the screen and see what you guys are adding to the conversation. You may want one and you may not, but what we're going to do is whoever's comment seems to spark the conversation the most, touch a nerve with me and the subject of not resting on your laurels. We're going to announce the winner by the end of our little session today, and I'm going to sign. This is a Catherine Opie, famous photographer, one of the top photographers in the United States today, took this portrait. I'm going to sign it to you, top comment of the day, and we'll get your snail mail address and mail it out to you. You know, I was watching a Steve Jobs video once. They had just, you could say he had just created the iPhone. And we all know now, all these years later, what genius the iPhone is. We rave about it, about the design, about the magic of it. And he said, after he stood on stage and presented it to his workforce, he was so proud of them, even though it was in his imagination, they were the techies who actually went into the guts of that phone and made it what it is today. He got off the stage that day and he said that he glanced at this beautiful invention, this creation of his, and how hard he had worked on it, how long he had fathomed it, and he said to himself, you got to move on. This can't, Teddy, stop shaking. You can't just rest on the laurel of the iPhone. And his particular quote, Steve Jobs, was, you do something. I think if you do it, and you do it pretty good, then you should go do something else wonderful. Not dwell on it for too long. Just figure out your next steps. Gloria Steinem, I was chatting with recently. Gloria's 82 now, leader of the women's movement, award-winning author, just respected from all different corners of our society, still looking pretty darn good at 82 also, healthy, vibrant. And I said to her, Gloria, what are you most proud of? Of all the things, founding Ms. Magazine, what are you the most proud of? And she said, I haven't done it yet. I haven't done what I'm going to be most proud of yet. Well, now, there's a leader. And speaking of leaders, you know, in the corporate world and in the coaching world, in sports and other areas, often, not to be cruel, but it's a tactic. I don't personally take it as a leader, a coach, but some coaches don't believe that you laud your charges and tell them that they've reached perfection, that they've done the best job that could possibly done, because they're afraid that that person, that group, is going to sit back and say, perfection? Well, never going to get better than that. I'm just going to sit and rest on those laurels. I was curious before we talked today where that phrase comes from, resting on one's laurels. And I found out that it goes back way to the ancient Greeks. You can remember, you see it on vases. You see the pictures of the athletes in Greece wore the laurel wreaths around their head. Well, so did the philosophers. Anybody who was something of importance and considered a person who was victorious in that culture, ancient Greece, wore a laurel wreath, and it came to be the phrase that you don't repose. It went all the way up into the 1800s. You know, at a funeral even, they would use laurel wreaths and laurel leaves all around a grave, and you said, here's a person who now that they're passing from this earth, deserves to repose and rest on their laurels. But while you're still alive, even in old age, even a Gloria Steinem at 82 will say, I'm not resting on my laurels. And in 1825, one poet put it this way, genius is inexhaustible. So you can reach even genius, but don't rest on those laurels. So because of the moment in Key West, I'm kind of feeling this. I'm feeling the issue of resting on one's laurels. Gabby, you guys know Gabby. Say hi, Gabby.
Hi.
Gabby's with me today, and since I'm not able to read some of the comments that are coming in, what do you got?
From Michelle Goldberg, she says, I have a very hard time after meeting my goals. I feel lost.
Yeah, Michelle, you know, I hear that. Sometimes it's easier to get yourself up, find your gumption when you haven't met your goal. You're still striving, and even if that goal, you know, hasn't become possible and you've fallen a little short, but you're proud of yourself, but you've still got the fire. You know, often we ask athletes when they didn't make something, like me. I tried the Cuba swim at age 28. Interviewers always ask me, well, if you had made it back then, would that have been worse for your life? Because then you would have had this overwhelming satisfaction and you would have not had that fire anymore and had that drive to go on and become everything you could be and finally capture that dream of yours. Well, you know, in some ways, I'll tell you, the victory was sweeter all those years later at the age of 64. And I do think that, you know, had I succeeded at 28, I would have been sitting around for a little while. I hope not too long, not forever. But Michelle, I hear you. And so I think the thing is, you're allowed. Celebrate. You do something that you've put so much of yourself into, so much of your time into. You take it in, celebrate yourself, go to sleep at night, pulling up the covers with a smile. You did it. And then remember, did you do it just to reach that destination, or were you chasing that goal of yours because you loved what it made you be? You loved all the potential that had to come out in all different ways. You loved that you got over some of the disappointments and the setbacks and the obstacles as you were going along, and you feel proud of yourself that you rose above them time and time. You got slapped down, you got back up, slapped down again, got back up, and finally you got there. So don't think of the end. Don't think of your winning moment. And you know, and that's all there is. Think about that traveling, the journey, not just the destination, Michelle. And you will say to yourself, I want to chase again. It's not just that I want to achieve again. I want to be the chaser of the next dream and tap into the next areas of my potential like I did last time.
That takes us into our next question. Perfect
What?
segue. From Kimberly Cook, she said, what is your next challenge? And it doesn't have to be a swimming goal, question mark?
You know, it's not going to be a swimming goal. What's your name again?
Kimberly Cook.
Kimberly. That Cuba swim was everything. The earth is 4/5 water, and I can look at the globe, and couldn't we find hundreds, thousands, I mean, virtually millions of swims, 100-mile swims, from Mexico to across the Gulf of Mexico to the United States, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Cuba was everything to me. There's no other swim that's going to capture my soul the way that swim did. So I'm out of the water. It doesn't mean I won't do some charity swims, and I try to keep my stroke together and always be a proud swimmer. But in terms of dreaming, I and my buddy Bonnie, whom I've mentioned a couple times now, we are trying to launch the biggest walking initiative in the world. A lot of people are walking. Some incredible. Somebody just wrote me from Phoenix yesterday. On March 18th, the Museum of Walking in Phoenix is going to host a contemplative silent walk for 1,000 people. They're going to go out on a beautiful trail and not say a word for the 90 minutes it takes them. I just heard from somebody called the Freedom Walkers in New York. They went down to Washington, D.C. a month ago with 50 people. It wasn't part of the protest march, but they just had 50 people who walked 50 miles in one day. 50 miles in one day, that's just about 2 marathons back to back, is an incredible accomplishment. Many corporations, Johnson & Johnson is one of the corporations that we deal with Everwalk, our particular mission. They have 200,000 employees worldwide, and as does Target and many other corporations, United Healthcare. They give all kinds of incentives to anybody who can wear their device their tracker on their wrist and get down at least 10,000 steps, which is about 5 miles every day. So people are walking, but Bonnie and I are ambitious. We want to get millions of people walking. If there's a wave of walking that's already started, we want to turn that wave, especially in the United States, where we become a very sedentary society. They say sitting is the new smoking. We want to turn the wave that is walking into a tsunami of walking. And it's not easy. Because of all the competition that's out there, there are all kinds of worthy walks for charity. People are going over to Spain to walk the famous Camino, which is another spiritual type of walk. People go down to, the Inca Trail and hike up to Machu Picchu. I mean, if we look back to the history, the Homo sapien, walked out of Africa and to Asia. So we've been walkers for a long time, but Bonnie and I want to turn this country, America, into a new country of walkers like they haven't been for many, many decades. And it's a dream. It's taking, all the thought and all the energy I have every day. I go to sleep thinking about Everwalk. I wake up churning the wheels about Everwalk. How are we going to inspire? Teddy, stop shaking. It's really raining. He's very wet. How are we going to inspire this sedentary society of ours to become a rabid culture of walkers? So that's my new big thing, and I'm on to it. I wanted to read you a couple of other quotes. Steve Martin, who may be our most intelligent of all comedians, this is his quote, and I just love it. He says, "I don't like to look back. And I'm always worried about the next thing. I'm always focused on the next thing rather than resting on the laurels and the degradation of the last thing." Right? What about degradation? So the thing you've done is here, and you could say nobody can ever take it away from you. But the truth is, the farther away you get from it, if you stick with it, if you focus on it and refuse to let go of it. It's just that, it's that. From way back when, from 20 years ago, it will start to degrade the beauty of it. I love that word he used, the degradation of the past happens when you dwell on it and you give it too much focus, because we're traveling a street, a one-way street. And the farther you look back, yeah, you're allowed to pat yourself on the back. You're allowed to learn. You probably made some mistakes. You're allowed to flash back, but really, isn't life all about moving onward, forward, so you don't look back and spend too much time there?
Cindy says, can you speak about losing faith in the idea that input leads to a predictable output due to an overwhelming amount of economic disruption or general disorder? How to reinvigorate agency and goal setting?
Well, there's a lot going on in that particular statement, Cindy. Well, first of all, can you lose faith in general? Yes, sure. I think we're in troubled times right now in this country of ours. It's a divisive time, and there are a lot of people over these first 3 weeks of this particular presidency who are losing some faith. They're worried. They're worried in the systems and the values we've worked hard to build up. So I don't want to get too political, and I don't want to divide us in this conversation, but you can lose faith. And then what do? I have friends since the election who have been so down, so horrified, so worried about the future that they've said they can't operate. They can't function. So they're basically, or shall we say virtually, locking their doors. Well, I'm not judging them. They've got to feel what they feel, and maybe it's just going to take some time for them to get out again and open that door. But I say that even agencies that are, filled with bureaucracies and decisions that aren't yours and don't reflect your values, you don't lock your door. You keep trying. You try diplomacy, and you try tougher than diplomacy, and you make chinks in the armor of that steel door that you're trying to get through. And if it truly becomes impossible, then you change your dream. You know, I wanted to achieve a PhD at one time. I was in a PhD program for comparative literature, and I admit that it wasn't just about the actual learning. I loved reading in different languages. You know, you'd read Flaubert and you'd read Turgenev, and you'd discuss philosophically and socially and economically and literature and art Paris of the late 19th century and Russia, Moscow of the late 19th century, and what were the threads that connected them both, and what about the language, French to Russian. And so I was impassioned about the content, the material itself, but I admit also, and maybe I was younger and more impressionable in terms of labels, I wanted to be a PhD. I wanted to earn a PhD and have that again at the bottom of my name. You write your name and you get to write PhD at the back of it. I think there are doctors and lawyers who when they're younger anyway, they're very taken with the prestige, the esteem of the title that they're going to earn, along with what they're learning and how they're going to practice law and medicine. And midway into that PhD, I swam around Manhattan Island and my life changed. I got broadcasting offers. I all of a sudden had a little bit of a media push behind me that allowed me to, you know, reach up for bigger stars and go chase things like the Cuba swim. And I struggled with it, but I left that PhD behind and I analyzed it, and I thought, the truth is, all these other avenues that are open to me now, if I might say so, I kind of have the gift of gab, and broadcasting seemed right, and I wasn't pursuing that before. And I can always read Flaubert. I can always read Dostoevsky. But can I have the opportunity for these career options that are in front of me now? And you know what? I've never regretted it. I've never felt like, oh, what a loser, and I gave up. It was just the right decision. That particular dream of the PhD lost its meaning for me. So I think for all kinds of reasons, whether it's the, as you say, big world kind of bureaucratic agency that you're up against is keeping you from going where you want to go, you try. And you try to meet with people and you try to make your way. And if it just can't be done, then you switch that dream. And it's okay. It's okay. I tell the kids that all the time. You know, we don't want to tell kids to give up too quickly because we're in an age of, quick information, constant devices all over the place. And it's easy to just, give up and do the next thing. So perseverance and sticking with something is terribly important for character and for future and for success. But sticking with something that doesn't make sense anymore, you just can't get there. That doesn't make sense. So, I say, take a good look at it. Take a good look at why you would leave that dream behind and start chasing a new dream.
Diane Tenor Wright says fear of failure is a big hurdle to overcome.
Yeah, fear of failure. I do a lot of corporate speaking. I've been speaking for 40 years, and I often used to title my speech, The Courage to Succeed. And the truth is, and I changed the title of that speech after a while and called it instead, The Courage to Fail. Because we all pretty much have the courage to succeed. If you've got a fairly low bar and something that you're going to nail, like there are all kinds of studies of 7th and 8th graders now, who, especially as they're approaching high school years and they're going to have to start making the grades to get into the colleges they want, they choose low bars. They choose easy courses, easy teachers, so that they can get that A. They can wind up with that 4.0 average if they can orchestrate it, instead of choosing a high bar where failure, or if not outright failure, not brimming success, might be a more obvious outcome than outright success. So, yeah, I think that the fear of failure is very strong. And, when I used to be in swims, even just training swims, and I was, could see that I was losing my will, that the body was starting to fail and fatigue and go into, certain pain and suffering, you feel the mind going down with it. And what motivated me wasn't success, wasn't thinking, I want to get there. I want that feeling of reaching that other shore. What motivated me was the fear of failure, of not wanting to be the person who gives up, who loses her will. I'd rather not make it there and not be afraid to fail. So I think it's a great phrase to think of for you, Diane, is the courage to fail. You know, I've quoted it before, so forgive me if you've already heard me say it, but it's one of those brilliant all-time quotes of the 20th century, and it's Teddy Roosevelt's, who, to paraphrase it quickly, used to tell a story, and he'd say, you go ahead. You sit in your comfortable leather armchair, and you be the critic. You be the analyst. And this guy over here, he's going to get in the ring while you're sitting comfortably with a drink in your hand. And he is going to get bloodied. He's going to get dirtied. He's going to fail and he's going to fall. Well, Teddy Roosevelt says, I'd rather be that guy than the cold, timid soul who's so afraid to fail he's never going to know success. Teddy Roosevelt, the way he put it was, I want to dare greatly. And daring greatly is another way of saying, I want the courage to fail. You know, put it that way. Think about it that way, Diane.
Our friend Garrett at Facebook says hi, and he wants you to come back to Facebook and visit again soon.
Garrett, I can't wait to see you. First of all, anybody here, I guess there are 4 campuses. Are there a Facebook, Gabby? I do believe there are 4. But the one I've been to, Menlo Park, partly designed by the Imagineering folks of Disney. I'm telling you, if you're in the tech world and you're looking for a great job, go interview at Menlo Park at Facebook. You will be in the Disneyland of the tech world. We're talking... You know, these people are working. Steam's coming out of their brains. And I got to see Mark Zuckerberg's office. Oh, awesome. This all glass modern space with low slung couches and giant screens all over. I got to meet with Sheryl Sandberg, you know, who is a mover and a shaker. And I'm a big fan of hers. And I might say that she's a little fan of mine as well. So it was really fun to meet with her. Bonnie and I got to go meet with her. And that campus is bicycles all over the place. You get out of the building, you hop on a bicycle, any bicycle, you ride over to the parking lot or you ride over to the ice cream store. 7 restaurants from sushi to barbecue, all free. You just go eat at any time of the day. Rock climbing walls, you know, kayak pools. I mean, the place, you don't want to leave. These people are motivated, aren't you, Garrett, to have a good time, and nobody has to ask. You don't go and ask some boss or superior, hey, is it okay if I go out and, you know, play a little ping pong with my friend for a while? You go play a little ping pong if you want, because they're so sure. The Facebook model is so sure that you are there because you're motivated. You want to be part of the Facebook gutsy brand that's constantly innovating. They're on the edge. You know, Facebook is a partner with us, with Everwalk, so we are bound to succeed. I know that. Anyway, Garrett, okay, I just had to do a little, you know, description of this paradise where you work. But what's your comment or question?
Garrett says he loves the books in the background. What are you reading right now?
You know, Garrett, I all my life have been a big reader. We were talking at the beginning of the year on one of these Facebook Live sessions about, you know, New Year's resolutions. And one of mine was to get back to reading. I mentioned before I was in a PhD program. When I was a kid, I used to read in German. I could read Thomas Mann, Rilke in German. I read a fluent French. I read a pretty good Spanish. So I like to read foreign languages, and I'm going back to Cuba in May. So right now, I'm reading, it's kind of a trashy book, but it's for my vocabulary. It's called Extranjeros, The Strangers. So I'm reading a book in Spanish by my bed. The vocabulary is just a little above my level, which makes me have to dig in and figure out, you know, what is the form. Podría would mean I would have. So, you know, I'm just starting to learn the conditionals and the imperfects and the different forms of verbs in Spanish. And I'm taking myself 3 months kind of intensively to make sure I read every day. But, you know, really for the last, gosh, I don't know, 67 now. So I'd have to go back to, well, it started when I was a teenager, but very intensely the last 25 years I've been reading the cosmos. And so, you know, Stephen Hawking's the most, obvious of that, but there are all kinds of astrophysicists who've written for the lay person as well as for their physics peers. And there's just nothing for me about reading about how this universe, got created. What is a black hole? What is the future of this universe going to be? I mean, we really should be reading about what the future of planet Earth is going to be, if it's really going to be part of the universe going forward. But that's a whole other subject of optimism or pessimism, depending on your point of view. But so I do read about the cosmos as well. But right now it's español. Leo el español todo el día, toda la noche. Gracias, Garrett. Muchas gracias.
John Metzler says, chasing big dreams, especially within the realm of endurance sports, can often seem incredibly selfish. As someone that's training for my first full Ironman, I'm curious to hear how you have dealt with the feeling or perception of selfishness. I would imagine you felt that way about your Cuba swim at one point or another.
John, you're right on. Isn't it easy for me to say to a woman who's working 2 jobs, raising 3 children alone, also taking care of 1 elderly parent, how do I say to that woman, go chase your dreams? You want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro? You want to run the Boston Marathon? You can do it. Well, John, you and I are more 2 peas in a pod. You seem to have carved out some time for yourself, and you've got some luxury to be able to go chase this Ironman dream of yours. And I wish you luck, by the way. I hope you get in touch with me and tell me you've done it. So it's true that I have worked hard in my life. I've had jobs, and I've, worked the party line like everybody else, and I saved some money. I went broke doing the Cuba swim. I can admit that to you. But I had the luxury of time. I don't have a family. I don't have children that I've got to come home and be there with every day. I have my own free time that I could go out training. So, agreed. I don't know if you'd maybe so much categorize it as selfish, but you could say that I've created some choices for myself, and I've been lucky in having those choices. So I agree with you. I'm kind of careful when I speak to people about chasing dreams. Because often many people have not grown up with the luxury of education and chasing dreams. I used to have a housekeeper who worked for me named Marcelina. She was from Mexico. I went down to the home where she was born, all dirt floors, and we know this kind of poverty. And Marcelina is smart as a whip. I guarantee, has she been born into my circumstances, going to good schools from all the way up from when I was a little kid, having opportunities to go to great universities, Marcelina would have been anything she wanted in this world. Not to denigrate being a housekeeper, but that became her only choice by the time she moved to the States and, had a slew of family members to support. And we would sit on my bed sometimes and cry and hold hands together about the injustice of those who have and sometimes those who have nothing. So I thank you for keeping me humble about that. And I do always need to be careful when I talk about people's dreams. Sometimes a person's dream is to, I just met a man, 46 years old this week. He was my driver. So, I get to have a driver now. I was at a speech in Orlando. I was picked up by a guy. He's 46 years old. We get chatting in the car. I wanted to practice my Spanish with Jose. So I did. Jose Rodriguez. He was from Dominican Republic. He grew up in Queens, a poor kid, went to the lowest of the public schools there, didn't get a chance to go to college, and now he's 46, got a pretty good job as a high-end driver, making his tips, etc. Very personable, great guy. But he's in nursing school. That's not easy at the age of 46. He went back and got a college degree in his 40s, and now he's in nursing school. He wants to make something of himself. So there's a dream, and I was so taken with him and so proud of him. So we have all different levels. What do we say now? We're 7 billion people on this planet. 3.5 billion, half of the people living on this planet have next to nothing. Water to drink every day, a safe roof over one's head, worried about terrorism and bombs going off down the street. The other half, 3.5 billion, you and me, John, and Jose and Orlando, have various degrees of something. We have enough that we can actually dream. So I get you, and you know, I've never felt particularly selfish, but I admit I felt very privileged and fortunate.
Catherine Reinhardt Toriello says, thank you for the great motivational talk. I really needed this right now.
All right, Catherine. Well, you know, write back in, write another note as to, if you don't mind sharing, why you need it right now. You know, I find that with people, and it's only normal, right? That sometimes you're just strong. You're just riding the wave. You don't need anything. You're just, you know, just get out of my way. I'm bulldozing through. And then it doesn't even have to be some particular trauma or some moment that's turned against you. You're in a funk sometimes where you can't see yourself through. You do need your colleagues and your friends and your family, and maybe somebody who's got some words of wisdom and some motivation for you. Sometimes you need that. I want to look back at my notes because there was one other thing. There was a quote I had forgotten, and I wanted to share it with you. Well, you know, it's the whole, I know what I wanted to say. It's about relationships. Okay, you know, we're sort of talking today more about don't rest on your laurels as if you've succeeded at something very concrete. So, you know, the most obvious example, and they use the word laureate, is the Nobel laureate. And laureates at universities are the people who have achieved the highest rung of success. They're the nobles, you know, of their educational sphere. And I also think that it comes down to relationships. If you have a dedicated friendship, like I have with Bonnie, and I have with my other best friend, Candace. These are 40-year-long relationships, and we tend to those gardens. And you can't rest on the laurels of a marriage or a friendship or raising a child, right? Every relationship you have, just because you did the right thing and you showed up and you were there, you don't just then walk away and say, well, I don't need to do anything with that relationship anymore. It's all good. It's all solid. That's how we all come to the end of marriages. I know I came to the end of mine. I thought that I was, you know, the spouse, the partner of all time, giving and caring, but I let it slide. And 10 years went by, and all of a sudden, my partner was saying to me, you know, it's been years since you've been that good, solid, trusted partner. You know, you haven't been tending to us at all, and now you want to save it all, but it's too late. You weren't there for a long time, and boy, that was a sad ending. It took me a long time to get over it, and I look at that as also resting on laurels. Just because I'm a good, loyal friend to Bonnie, to Candace, to my family, my sister, my nephew, his wife, I don't say, well, just, you know, you've done all you need to do. That's going to be good forever. It won't be good forever. I got to tend to that. I can't rest on those laurels either.
Catherine Reinhardt Toriello wrote back in response to your question. She said, to answer your question, I'm about to run my third destined 50-miler in 1 week, attempting to better my time from last year and make my goal. It has been very tough, but wonderful to strive for this again.
Are you telling me 3 50-milers in 1 week?
I think she's saying that in 1 week, her third one is coming up.
Oh, your third one, I was going to say, that's insane. Yeah, so, you know, 50 miles, I'm just trying to picture, well, it is basically 2 marathons back to back. I mean, anybody who runs a marathon has my utter regard. So I'm trying to picture what 2 of them are like. There's got to be a lot of pain, but you've gone through 2, and there must be something, Catherine, that is drawing you to do a third. You know, I meet people all the time who do 1 marathon, and they say, that's enough. I always wanted to do it. I wanted that notch in my belt. I trained for it. I ran all the way through it. I didn't walk a step, or if I had to walk, that's okay. I finished. I got to that finish line. And then I meet people who have done 40 marathons and they can't stop. They want to do another. They love the experience. They love the challenge. And even if their time doesn't get better, their person and their experience gets better. So there's something in it that you like. And I guess since you're having a tough time and it's only a 1 week away, I assume you've trained, you know what you're doing. So I assume you're not having a tough time physically, but you're struggling with, is the will there? Are your emotions there? So I think you need to sit down with a ledger. You need to sit down with a legal pad and make a big line down the middle. And on the left side, put the positives. What it is you've felt before and you want to feel again. What drives you to do these 50 milers? And put on the right side what you don't like about it anymore, what you perhaps fear about it, and take a look at both of those sides. I'm certainly not going to talk you out of going next week and say, maybe you really don't want to do it anymore. I have a feeling if you came this far, a week away, you do want to do it. And you're not suffering, a sprained ankle or a stress fracture or something that's, really going to keep you from doing it. So make that list and focus on that left side. Focus on that side of the page that's telling you why you wanted to do this thing in the first place, why you did a second one. After you recuperated from the second one, why you get in your head, I'm going to do it again. There's something that made me feel alive, that made me feel superior, shall we say. You'll discover it, and you got a week to go to look yourself in that proverbial mirror and figure out what it is.
Last question here. Denise Snyder Oniscanich said, "This is my biggest struggle. Family, work, and training. Training always gets sacrificed. As I get older, I fall backwards in my performance. It's frustrating, and I always feel like I'm starting over."
Yeah. Getting older is tough. We get wiser in so many ways, and I felt even, at 64 for the Cuba swim, I actually felt I was stronger for that particular sport and that event. I was better at 64 than I was way back at 28. But let's face it, as a general rule, performance does suffer. We're a little bit stiffer, a little bit slower as we get older. It doesn't mean that we can't still do, vital, incredible things. I know people in their 80s. Bonnie's mother is 90. You won't believe this woman. She goes out and bangs out 5 miles around the park. I mean, the word feeble for that 90-year-old Lila Stoll just isn't on the table. But I hear you, and I think you have to get real. You don't want to set limitations on yourself. I'm very big on broadcasting far and wide. Don't let the societies, including health insurance limitations, tell you how you should feel and who you should be. I mean, you may have heard me tell this story before, but I was at a speech one time and a woman raised her hand and she said, well, I'm about your age and you know how it is. We have a lot of aches and pains now. And I said, wait a second. You just speak for yourself. There are a lot of us in this room, younger than us, and there are some older than us, and you're saying that all of us our age are feeling aches and pains. I'm not. I might feel other things, but I got no aches and pains. I take great care of myself. I'm in, exemplary shape, and I would admit if I have aches and pains as a daily, sort of experience, but I don't. So don't categorize all people our age as having anything at all. You just tell us what you're feeling, okay? So the same thing goes for you. You decide if maybe you're still trying things and chasing after things that just aren't appropriate for how you feel. Not your age. Don't go by your age, just how you feel and what you want to do and what you know you're really capable of when you're trained up for it. Now, I got to make a decision as we're going to sign off as to, I was going to go for the comment that I liked the best, and Gabby, I'm going to ask you to help me remember. I liked all the comments. I think that John was really good. What's John's last name? Metzler. You know what? You called me to action today, John. I did like very much the woman who brought up the question about fear of failure. I think that's important to all of us. But John, you made me dig back deep and remember something that I should keep in mind all the time, which is how privileged I am. That I get to go chase big dreams. And I give, as I said before, I give myself some credit for that. I orchestrated this life for myself. But I am lucky, and I have had privileges. So whether you want it or not, John, before you do your Ironman, this guy's coming in the mail to you, okay? Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, all of you, for tuning in today. We get sort of deep on these Facebook Live sessions, which I like. And it makes me, I loved looking up the whole Greek history today of the word, the phrase, resting on one's laurels, back to the Greek laurel wreaths. Peace out. Hope you're having a good weekend. If you're in the Northeast, I see that snow. It might be pretty, but I think it's also wretched, so be safe, everybody. We'll talk next time. Bye.